There are people out there all across the country pushing boundaries to grow the game of golf. Like champion speed golfer Lauren Cup, who plays faster than anyone else. And Will Lowry, whose work in the golf community inspires more kids to get into the game. As a champion partner of the Masters, Bank of America supports everyone determined to find out what's possible in golf and in life. What would you like the power to do? Bank of America. Bank of America N.A. member FDIC, copyright 2025, Bank of America Corporation, all rights reserved.
Auto insurance can all seem the same until it comes time to use it. So don't get stuck paying more for less coverage. Switch to USAA Auto Insurance and you could start saving money in no time. Get a quote today. Restrictions apply.
Buckeye Talk is about to begin. Hey, 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 come on in.
Welcome back to Buckeye Talk. I'm Stephen Means. That's Stefan, Krajisnik, and that's Andrew Gillis. You're getting this pod on Saturday evening. This is also going to serve as the Monday pod. We're just giving it to you 2 days early because it's great stuff and we wanted to get it to you as quickly as possible. Get the text, 614-350-3315, 2-week free trial, $3.99 after that. We were texting from Ohio State's 11th spring practice. We're a week away from spring game. And listen, it was great. A lot of good stuff. A lot of good stuff came out of Saturday. I guess, Stefan, we should start with the quarterbacks, right? That just sounds like the logical place to start. If you had to... No, I'm just going to say it. They made the quarterbacks live. What do you think of that decision? And we haven't talked to Ryan Day. We'll talk with him on Monday, and I'm sure that will be at the top of everybody's mind of a position in football in general that you don't make live. Why did you allow your quarterbacks to be live? They also did it on Thursday's practice as well. What did you think of that decision in terms of good, bad, indifferent? What's your thoughts on it?
I liked it. I thought it was a good decision because you have three quarterbacks who haven't really played a ton of football, and you can't expect them to be game ready without any, getting really any game reps, right? Like quarterbacks have to move around. Quarterbacks got to get hit. Quarterbacks got to get up. Quarterbacks, we saw on a play where it was 4th and short and they were, going forward in practice. Sometimes quarterbacks got to scramble and they got to be the ones to get those yards. And you got to know the consequences of, getting those yards and what comes with that. Obviously, Ohio State's defenders aren't, tackling Julian Sayin in the same way that they're going to lay, some ferocious hits on other quarterbacks that decide to leave the pocket. But you saw a little bit of it. You kind of got to see, we're talking so much about leadership. Like, what do these quarterbacks look like when they get hit? Do they get up and do they get right back at it? I thought Tavian St. Clair looked great in that sense of, lowering his shoulder, taking a hit, getting back up and acting like nothing happened. So that really is the extent of this quarterback competition that I took much from today, is that we got to see them, play live and get a hit. Outside of that, I don't know how much we learned, but I like the decision. I just think the situation that you have right now with your quarterbacks and the lack of experience, the more game-like reps that they can get, the better. Obviously, you have to be safe and you're not going to do it all the time, right? Like these quarterbacks weren't live on every drive or on every play. Like there were times where, they made it clear, okay, no hitting the quarterback here. But when they did go live and they let him get after it, I thought it was a good idea.
So, Andrew, what did you take away from today? If you had to rank based off performance in Saturday's practice, Tavian St. Clair, Julian Sand, and Lincoln Keenholz, what would be your order?
See, that's an interesting question because I think I would put Lincoln above Julian. However, how do you want to weight Tavian versus, threes and things like that? Tavian going lower in the pecking order versus Julian and Lincoln kind of mixing and matching, right? So I think if you had to rank them, you just off of pure play today, Tavian's probably 2. Probably go Lincoln, Tavian, Julian. However, it's kind of like saying, one guy got a B plus in an AP class in high school, and another guy got a B in the regular history class in high school, right? Like one is very clearly more difficult, and one is very clearly a tougher task, and that is probably where I would go with it. I thought Lincoln looked really good at times. I think all the quarterbacks were a mixed bag. I think there was, a lot that Ryan Day is, we joked earlier in the week, it depends on what kind of weekend you want to have by how much you look at the film. I think Ryan Day could probably point to a lot of really good with Julian, with Lincoln, with Tavian. And I think there's going to be a lot of moments where he's going to be, okay, we still have a long way to go and we still have a lot to work on. So that would probably be my order. I think if you were to weight it properly, I would put Julian 2, but I thought Tavian looked pretty good. I thought, he moved the ball well. The offense moved well when he was out there. He was quick with his decisions. You see the fluid throwing motion. I thought that was, precise. Steven, you mentioned this, I think afterwards. I think he did escape the pocket a little bit too early. I think sometimes he hit the eject button, pulled the chute a little bit too early, maybe a little bit more or a little bit earlier than he needed to. But otherwise, I thought he looked pretty decent. And there was a lot of good and a lot of bad from all three of those guys. So I think it was an interesting day to watch all three quarterbacks perform.
I'd probably go Lincoln, Julian, Tavian.
Yeah, I think I'm Lincoln, Julian, Tavian. Tavian looked fine. He looked like a freshman, a very good freshman.
That's
by the way,
exactly what I was going to say. It's just like he was a freshman out there. There was good, there was bad. He was going against the threes. There's just not a whole ton to take from it, in my opinion.
And it's not dismissive at all. It's he just looked like at his best, he made the most of the situation he was in. At his worst, he looked like a dude who's been here for 4 months. And that's fine. But the bigger thing is we all have Lincoln ahead of Julian. And if you go out in the ecosystem right now, most people are saying that. That's just Lincoln. They had a team period. When we walked in there, they were in the middle of a team period where they start at 20 and they just have to march down the field and go create a scoring drive. Lincoln did that twice. On one, he got them all the way down to the goal line, or at least in the red zone area, and then Sam Williams-Dixon punched it in for a scoring drive for Lincoln Kienholz. On the other one, he hit a 40-yard touchdown pass to Carnell Tate. Julian led one. I can't remember if he ended it with a throw. I don't think he ended it with a throw or not, because I'm pretty sure that Lincoln was the only one who threw a touchdown pass during all that. And then Tavian led one. And on Tavian's, and I'll get more of that in the second half, but it was a Bo Jackson touchdown on a play that I think I know who I'm getting ready to drive the bus for this year. At least he's become the leading candidate, and I'll get more into that in the second part of this podcast. But Lincoln led a touchdown drive, and he also threw a 40-yard touchdown to a guy who's a starting receiver here. First of all, Carnell and Jeremiah were a little bit more involved than maybe I was expecting them
to be. A lot more Jeremiah today than I thought I was going to.
Because on the defensive side, I swear, I only saw Sonny Styles once. Stefan, you didn't even think you saw him at all.
I don't think he played. I don't know.
So regardless, he didn't do anything today. Caleb Downs was out there for one period. That was about it. And that's to be expected. So for JJ and Carnell, but they're also trying to get chemistry with a new quarterback, so maybe that played into it as well here. But we all think Julian Sand's going to be the starting quarterback here. And that's been the case. In fact, you talk to people behind the scenes, everybody thinks Julian Sand's going to be the starting quarterback here. But Lincoln Kienholz won today. What does that mean, Stefan? How should people view what happened today? In a world where if you just tell people Lincoln Kienholz won today, they're probably overreacting, and agendas and narratives are already being formed about it's 2023 all over again. Some people are Team Kyle, some people are Team Devin Brown, when it's actually, what's the truth? What's actually happening here? What's the biggest takeaway from the spring in a world where the first time we got to really see these guys throw the ball around, Lincoln Kienholz won?
My takeaway is that we have to view this the way Ryan Day told us to view this spring. It's not about Lincoln played better than Julian today. It's about Lincoln had a pretty good day of practice and Julian had a shaky day of practice.
Yeah.
And on Thursday it might have been the opposite. Last week it might have been the same. We just have to view this as, okay, Lincoln Kienholz is doing things in practice or did things in practice today that make me think, okay, maybe he's more capable of being a starter at Ohio State than we thought at the start of this. But it can't just be Lincoln Kienholz as a starter because he was better than Julian Sayin today. Like, you just can't think that way because that's not how Ohio State's structuring this spring. That's not how they're viewing this spring. And in the Julian Sayin conversation, he had good moments and he had bad moments. And that's about what I expected from him this spring. And when you look at the good moments and you see, I thought Julian, it kind of looked like he was just maybe like a half second behind on some plays, just a little late to get the ball out. Yeah, that's a guy who's entering his sophomore year and hasn't played a meaningful rep yet. Like, he'll get there. He's going up against one of the best defenses in the country every day in practice. Like, he's going to get there. I'm not too worried about it. So you see the traits that people like. The quick release I thought was there. Julian showed a little bit more mobility than maybe I thought. I think he's sneaky got some mobility that people don't necessarily expect a ton with him just because he's not a Lincoln Kienholz or he's not a Tavian St. Clair, but he's got some legs to make things happen. Maybe not to the extent of like a CJ Stroud, but CJ was the same way where like, can you just get out? Can you extend the play when needed, right? We're not going to design runs for you all the time. So I don't know. I don't take too much from it. I refuse to walk away from today saying Lincoln was better than Julian. That's all that matters. To me, it was Lincoln had a pretty good day and Julian had a shaky day. And we'll figure it out in mid-August when it starts to matter a bit more who's better than the other.
So, Andrew, before spring practice started, we did our positional previews. And one of the things that we did was, what's your number one goal for every single position group? My goal for the quarterbacks was essentially Lincoln making this interesting. And not for the sake of maybe it changes who's the starter. Or maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. But that wasn't why. It was because you want the best possible result from this. Ryan Day says the standard here is Heisman Trophy finalist, Heisman Trophy caliber, first round draft pick caliber, national championship caliber. That's the standard at Ohio State. And how do you don't just get that because Julian Sayin was the number one quarterback in the 2024 recruiting class. That's not enough. It's got to be baked. And the room has to produce that every single year. And so best case scenario for me was Lincoln Kienholz pushes Julian Sayin to the point that it brings the best out of Julian Sayin. So I think Lincoln winning on Saturday in terms of the day, he didn't win. He won the day. If there was a hypothetical power rankings, well, then Lincoln would be first in today's power ranking. I think that is the best possible thing that could have come out of today. Because if we would have left today going, oh, Julian Sayin's awesome and the other two quarterbacks are a little bit shaky, I don't think the room is in a good place. But for the sake of where this room is going to be headed into the spring, headed into fall camp with, you got 4 practices left, one of those is the spring game. Lincoln Kienholz has done his job this spring by making this a competition that's coming from a place of strength and not what it was in 2023 when it didn't seem like anybody was emerging.
I think that's a correct way of looking at it. I also think it's correct if somebody were to say, yeah, but what if Julian Sayin just was that much better than all of them and he really didn't get pushed? And there wasn't a push from Lincoln and Julian was just, oh, wow, this guy is, oh my goodness, it's not even close. Ryan Day might name the starting quarterback at the spring game type of conversation, right?
Yeah.
I do think that there is value in saying, well, we know, and the room is in a good place because the starter's friggin' awesome. So I think you could make a rational case for both arguments. You can make a rational case for Lincoln pushing Julian is a really good thing, and Lincoln kind of letting people know, like, I'm not to be forgotten in this conversation is a really good thing. And I think there's also probably some people listening to this who are saying, well, if Julian just showed up and was like the best quarterback on the roster, that's also a really good thing. And he was far and away the best quarterback. That's really a good thing because he's a second-year guy. And if he's amazing, then we're going to have 2 years of amazing play. So
but the problem is that got taken off the table after practice number 1. Ryan Day told us that's not going to happen. That way of thinking went out the door the moment I asked Ryan Day, is there a world where that could happen? And essentially he said no, but also broke down why. It's not set up for either one of these guys to go win the job. It's set up for them to develop. So if that's not a real possibility for, sure, was there a world that existed where Julian Sand came in here and he was lights out? Sure, maybe that was going to be the case. But that's not what was going to happen in terms of structure. So, okay, what can happen in terms of structure? Ohio State has a legitimate quarterback battle where people can feel like whoever wins this battle is going to be awesome. I think that is better than the other way around when your structure is not going to provide a runway for someone to look so much more dominant than somebody else.
If we were going to take anything away from this in the sense of like the quarterback competition and not just how each quarterback is looking individually, the only takeaway I'm willing to have is Lincoln Kienholz is more of a candidate to start than we've been giving him credit for. And it's not because Julian Sand's not good. It's because Lincoln Kienholz is better than what you remember watching in the Cotton Bowl when he was thrust into an impossible situation. I think, and all three of us are part of that problem. I think all of us have looked at this quarterback competition and said, it's not a competition. It's Julian Sand versus the field. Well, maybe we need to give Lincoln Kienholz more respect. Maybe that's the takeaway from practice today is that he looked pretty good. He made some plays, and maybe it's more of a true competition because he is making it as opposed to Julian Sand is not good, and now what are we going to do?
Stefan, let's put this in terms that everybody loves talking about now. Gambling odds. Before today, put odds on Julian, Lincoln, Tavian, and did they change at all from after today? And if so?
No, I don't think so. Like Julian's probably like minus 200 to be the starter.
Okay, I was going to say like minus 250, minus 300, yeah.
Because the odds makers also don't, and this is a very hypothetical world, the odds makers aren't looking at Twitter saying, oh, Andrew, Steven, and Stefan say that, Lincoln looked good today. The odds makers know stuff where they say, yeah, but didn't they have 10 more practices before that where Julian Sand probably might have looked better than Lincoln? Like, I don't know. I don't think the odds change much today. I think maybe your outlook on if Lincoln is the starter, it's not end of the world. Like, I think there was some of that hanging around this. Like, man, if Lincoln Kienholz wins this competition, Ohio State's in a bad spot. Like, okay, maybe Lincoln Kienholz just wins the competition because he's a good quarterback.
You hit it. That's what it is. It's our fault. And not us at Buckeye Talk specifically. Just this way of thinking. Here's what happened. Lincoln Kienholz is the number 194 player and the number 15 quarterback in the 2023 recruiting class, who Ohio State found late in the process in a cycle where they were already looking for a more developmental guy. He wasn't even the original guy. It was Brock Glenn, who then flipped to Florida State in what felt like a mutual parting of ways for both sides. Lincoln Kienholz has been viewed as this throw-in quarterback. He's the long-term development guy. Let's check in year 3 on him. Julian Sand is the crown jewel of a 2024 recruiting class where he's the number 6 player and the number 1 quarterback. He is the epitome of what Ohio State's quarterback recruiting is. Highly rated guy who spends his first year learning behind the guy, and then his second year he's the starting quarterback, i.e. CJ Stroud. And it was emphasized by, I'm glad you brought up the Cotton Bowl. Lincoln Kienholz played 60 snaps his freshman year here. 12 of them were garbage snaps against Michigan State, who they blew out. 8 of them were against Minnesota, who they blew out. And then randomly, because Kyle McCord hopped in the transfer portal and Devin Brown got hurt in the Cotton Bowl, now all of a sudden Lincoln Kienholz, who again showed up in June that year, is thrown into a position he had no business being in, and he looked awful in it. And unfortunately, first impressions are everything. And so that's been the impression of Lincoln Kienholz. Meanwhile, Julian Sand is the Bama quarterback that they couldn't flip because Nick Saban existed. Nick Saban retires. Julian Sand comes north, looks awesome last spring, and is the 3rd string quarterback last year, and he has been anointed the next starting quarterback. Is that still true? Probably. We all still think that. But we did not give Lincoln Kienholz the credit of, let's check in on year 3. Well, it's year 3. He's been developing behind the scenes. Everything Ryan Day saw in him when they turned to him late in that 2023 cycle seems to finally be paying off. And he is best positioned to take his best shot to be this team's starting quarterback this year. That is not the narrative we had with Lincoln Kienholz. That is on us to not have that narrative because we just decided Julian Sands a starter, and he might still end up being the starter. But it goes back to the original thing I said. Lincoln Kienholz is exactly who people described he would be when he signed here. Let's check in on year 3. It's year 3, and he looks like a guy who was 3 years into the program, looked like he knew what he was doing. Was he perfect? No. I thought his accuracy was hit or miss at times. He's got a great deep ball. He also had some intermediate throws where he threw it 7 yards away from Jelani Thurman, right? So all of these guys had good and bad about their game. But if your initial impression with Lincoln Kienholz was a Cotton Bowl, which was just a pile of you-know-what for everybody offensively, throw that out when you're talking. Today was the first real piece of information we've gotten to get about Lincoln Kienholz as a quarterback, and I thought that was a positive. And it says something about where this room might be by the time they start fall camp.
I thought Steven was going to go into his Dennis Green impression. They are who we thought they were when he was talking about Lincoln Kienholz for a second.
He is. I thought I saw a really good quarterback today in a world where let's see where it's at in fall camp. But I think both of those guys showed things today where if they find consistency, I'm not worried about quarterback play. Now, that's why it's a long ways between now and August 31st because they still both lack that consistency. But for me, I saw what I needed to see from the individual. I think Ryan Day making his quarterbacks live because they've played a combined 87 snaps, the 3 of them in that room, and 40 of those snaps came in a game that was 2 years ago and is kind of irrelevant in the storyline of Ohio State. 40 of them against Missouri in a Cotton Bowl. Lincoln Kienholz played 8 snaps last year. Julian Sand played 20-something snaps last year. So they have to play real football. And so Ryan Day deciding to take that at a time when Mason Magg's not practicing this spring. So it's not just that they have 3 scholarship quarterbacks, Stefan. They have 3 quarterbacks, period. So this is a risky move to make them live when you can't afford any of these guys to get hurt. And it paid off because you got to see a real look of how they handle things when everything is a consequence. If you're going to lower your shoulder like Tavian did on Saturday and go fight for extra yards, there's a consequence. But it also tells you something about Tavian St. Clair's mindset. If Lincoln Kienholz is going to stay in that pocket, take the hit, and make the throw to Carnell Tate, great throw. But there's also consequences for that. That's a mindset thing. If Julian Sand, who we've talked about his quick release, that's great. But he also used it sometimes to try to bail himself out. And sometimes it worked, and sometimes it led to a pick for Jermaine Matthews.
Which I also thought was a great interception and probably gets into something we want to talk about later. But I just, there's just not a ton. The people on social media who are just naming Lincoln Kienholz as starting quarterback because of practice today, just don't let yourself fall into that hole. Think cognitively.
It's not the end of the world if Lincoln Kienholz is the better quarterback, right? Like it doesn't mean we had this conversation last year, Steven, where look, it's a different situation. I said that the other day. It's a different situation with Devin Brown and Will Howard. You had Will Howard who's coming in as a 5th-year quarterback, kind of felt like if we think Julian Sands is going to be the starting quarterback this year, I think we really felt like Will Howard was going to be the starting quarterback last year. And it's like, do you remember in the beginning part, it was like, hey, Will and Devin are kind of even, and Will and Devin don't look super different. And basically what it was Will Howard had showed up in January and needed some time to learn who he was throwing the football to. This year's a little bit different, because obviously, look, that's a veteran guy, played a lot of football. It's learning the offense, learning the system. This time around, it's still learning. It's just a different type of learning, right? There's going to be a growth process. And I think one practice is not necessarily indicative of where things are going to be, because when we see a week from now, as we record this podcast, a week from now on April 12th, Julian could go out there and be the far and away best quarterback that we see. And that could just be the way that this thing goes, right? Like that we saw basically if it's a 65-inch painting, if it's this big painting, we saw 5 inches of it. And people are trying to make, rash decisions about it. That's just not the way that this works right now.
Yeah, but even in that, the other guy who was in the competition, realistically in the competition, Devin Brown, he played 104 snaps coming into that spring. So even then, he's played more snaps than all three of these guys combined. So here, this is what are you encouraged by because this is it, right? They're not going to go crazy difficult next week because there's going to be coaches clinic things going on. They're gearing up for the spring game and whatnot. There's some finality to this practice as much as there is some finality to next week as well. Are we encouraged about the direction of the quarterback play, regardless of the winner right now, just the overall play of the room? Because we're also living in a world where I'm looking back at this. I said better. Stefan, you said better. Andrew, you said better. And our texter, 614-350-3315, 2-week free trial, 399 after that. When we did this, we all said the quarterback play in 2025 would be better than the quarterback play in 2024. We also said, myself, Stefan, and texter said it would be the second best position group. Andrew, you said it would be the third best, behind the wide receivers and the tight ends. We both said it was just going to be behind the wide receivers. Are we encouraged by what we saw today that those predictions, those statements that we made before we saw any of spring practice can still happen?
Yeah, I think the only thing I would change right now is maybe I'm more confident in the offensive line than I was.
Okay. You had the offensive line at 4. But that was a lot of new. Andrew, are you still are you encouraged by that?
Yeah, I don't necessarily think anything has jumped out in front of me to make me go, you were wrong, change it.
Right.
So I think we're here.
That's all that matters.
I see no reason to back off.
Even if I'm not mistaken, weren't people kind of freaking out about Justin Fields, his spring before he started?
Justin Fields had a very terrible spring game.
They were freaking out, not freaking out maybe last year, but there was questions about Will Howard after the spring.
Yeah.
I don't worry too much about it. I will say there was a few moments where the offense, I think on their first play that we saw, got a delay of game.
Yeah.
There were a few sloppy penalties. I think at one point Ryan Day was yelling over at someone. I thought it was Brian Hartline, and then maybe it wasn't.
He was yelling at Julian because he threw into double coverage. He ended up getting bailed out by a pass interference, but Ryan Day was hot.
Yeah. During all this, Will Howard is just standing there. And I have to imagine Ryan Day, every now and then is looking over his shoulder, maybe picking up his phone being how do I get in contact with the NCAA? Indianapolis is 317, something like that. Could someone get me in touch with the head of the NCAA? Because I wouldn't mind having another year of Will Howard right now.
Meanwhile, Will's I'm so glad I don't have to deal with that anymore. Okay, that's quarterbacks. Nobody should be freaking out about anything. We saw good, we saw bad. We saw spring from these quarterbacks. I think there's more to hang on to with the good than there is the bad, because there's going to be a lot of practices between now and when they play Texas on August 31st. Let's take our break here. And then Stefan wants to talk about the cornerback, so I guess we'll go there next. But there was a lot happening and a lot to get into. I've got some winners and some hot takes coming out of this spring that I want to get into as well, so we'll do that after the break here on Buckeye Talk.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile with a message for everyone paying big wireless way too much. Please, for the love of everything good in this world, stop. With Mint, you can get premium wireless for just $15 a month. Of course, if you enjoy overpaying, no judgments, but that's weird. Okay, one judgment. Anyway, give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. Intro rate first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See full terms at mintmobile.com.
This episode is brought to you by the Nissan Armada Pro 4X. With a twin-turbo V6 engine ready to propel your adventures up to 8,500 pounds of towing capacity to haul all your favorite toys and space for 8 passengers, Nissan's most powerful car yet will chew up and spit out anything you throw at it. Learn more about the all-new 2025 Nissan Armada at nissanusa.com. Towing capacity varies by configuration. See Nissan Towing Guide and Owner's Manual for additional information. Always secure cargo.
It's time for basketball, and Uber Eats is dropping deals on game day favorites to keep you locked in on the action. Like when you're craving a buzzer beater, but also buffalo wings. Or when an upset makes you want to ugly cry into a pizza. And right now, Uber Eats has game day deals from McDonald's, Popeyes, Pizza Hut, Wendy's, and hundreds more local favorites. So you can keep your eyes on the ball and your hands on a hamburger. Order now, only on Uber Eats. Product availability varies by region. See app for details.
This episode is brought to you by Walmart. New beauty is in bloom at Walmart, and it's all about springtime radiance. From Drybar, Tula Skincare, and hundreds more available online, Walmart has the premium brands you want and this season's on-trend products for flawless, glossy hair and hydrated skin. Big name beauty brands? Check. The things you love? Check. Find trending spring beauty and all you need to look and feel gorgeous at Walmart, on app and online.
We're back here on Buckeye Talk. Stephen Means, Stefan, Krajisnik, and Andrew Gillis. After Ohio State's 11th practice, they let the students in. They let the media come in and watch. Get the text 614-350-3315, 2-week free trial, $3.99 after that. Stefan, I'll let you take the lead here.
Well, this is kind of weird because we did a video for YouTube before we left the Woody, and there were some technical difficulties. So I'll summarize what happened in those videos that you now can't watch. In that
things happen.
I talked about the corners. Gillis talked about receiver play, and Steven talked about offensive linemen.
Kind of crazy. I was just gonna,
some like sick world where I don't know what happened, where we just like Freaky Friday did this thing, and everyone just started talking about different position groups than we normally do. I didn't mention Arvell Reese once.
Not once.
I know. The corners, I think, is the most interesting position battle on this roster, and that includes quarterback. I think the corner conversation is fascinating because you genuinely have 4 guys that I think could start day one on any roster, and I think it's interesting to note that because I think they're also the deepest room, and I think the immediate rebuttal that I even made to myself when I was thinking aloud about this was that receiver's the deepest room. Outside of the 3 starters, I don't know how confident you are in what you have at receiver right now. They're all very talented, but we can't just point at them and say that's a deeper room immediately just because those top 3 guys are so solidified, but I don't know what you have after that. I'm fairly confident that Aaron Scott's ready to start and that Devin Sanchez is not far behind. The corners looked outstanding, and we all have penciled in Davison and Jermaine as the starters. And I think it's fair, and I would still do that. If I was projecting a depth chart today, I would say those 2 guys are your starting corners. But Aaron Scott and Devin Sanchez are going to be impossible to leave off the field. And in an era where Ryan Day has shown us that he wants to rotate as many positions as often as possible to the point where we're talking about Austin Sareveld playing 30 different positions on the offensive line, like this could be another position where we see more rotation than we did last year. We saw it a bit at the end of the year with Denzel and Jermaine rotating a good amount, but I wouldn't be surprised if Davison rotated a good amount this year. I think Jermaine's going to rotate a good amount. I think there's going to be times where we see Jermaine move to the slot and Aaron Scott or Devin Sanchez has to come in. I think all 4 of these guys are ready to start. Devin Sanchez, I know we've pumped the brakes a little bit just because the bar that Jeremiah Smith has established is so high. Okay, you don't have to be Jeremiah Smith. You can still be a starting quality freshman. Denzel Burke got thrown in there, and that was more out of a place of necessity, but he wasn't the highest rated player in the world, and he proved that he could be pretty all right as a freshman starting. So I'm all aboard the Devin Sanchez hype train, which is not saying much. Like he's been hyped up for the better part of the last half decade. But at the same time, Aaron Scott's there too. Like that, I don't know how Tim Wallen and Matt Patricia are going to figure this out, but all 4 of those guys have to be on the field a ton this year because they're all playmakers. I thought Devin Sanchez, he got matched up with JJ. I thought he held his own. He got matched up with Quincy Porter, a pair of 5-star freshmen going at it. I thought he did pretty well. Aaron Scott went up against some of the best receivers, did pretty well. Like these guys are ready to play, especially by the time you get to August. They're definitely going to be ready to play. It's the deepest room. It's the best room. It's the most talented room probably on the roster. And it's going to be a tough task because I think it's a competition. It might not be a competition for starting spot because we know who the veterans and kind of the somewhat established guys are, but it's going to be a competition to stay on the field. Like, all right, you guys got the first series. It's a competition to see who's going to get the second series of the game. It's fascinating to me because those guys all look terrific. I think for Julian and Lincoln and Tavian, the quarterback competition has to be such a struggle in a sense that those are the guys they're having to throw against every day.
I think this might end up looking similar to 2016. That's the last time they truly rotated at corner when they had Garyon Conley, Marshawn Lattimore, and Denzel Ward, except now I think they might be able to do it with 4. And depending on where Devin Sanchez is by then, it might be 3 against Texas, or it might be 4 against Texas. But I just think they have an opportunity to handle some things some different ways. Okay, I want to talk about Austin Servelt. So here's my offensive line based off of what I saw on Saturday with the ones. And Ian Moore and Philip Daniels were also working in with the ones. But Ethan Owens was probably going to be this team's starting left tackle. Though I don't think he looked great on Saturday. But again, these transfers haven't hit as hard yet. But let's also give it some time. These transfers aren't Quinshon Judkins and Seth McLaughlin, guys who are coming from Power 5 programs who are national championship contenders or the best running back in the country, arguably. So give it some time there. But I think left to right so far, I would probably pencil this in. Ethan Owenyawa at left tackle, Stefan, Luke Montgomery at left guard, Carson Hinsman at center, Tegra Shabola at right guard, though I think that one may be a little lighter in pencil. I think Austin Servelt is going to be this team starting right tackle. And I mentioned earlier a play that Bo Jackson had for a touchdown. I feel like Austin Servelt was driving whoever the defensive lineman was like 40 yards down the field, even though it was like a 15-yard touchdown run. I don't know. He has gone over the last 48 hours of you and I talking about him as, hey, is this the guy who's rotating in a bunch of different spots? To now, what if he's just potentially their best offensive lineman this year? They put him at right tackle, and he's just a dude this year.
Yeah, he looked terrific today. That play that you talked about with Bo Jackson was just amazing. It was one of the, at that point, they had let students and media kind of shuffle in behind the line of scrimmage. So, like, if let's say if the line of scrimmage, they were starting at like the defense's 40-yard line, we were maybe like back at around the 50-yard line. So we were pretty close to the action, kind of getting to see the eyes, of Julian Sayin and Lincoln Keenholz. And you see Bo Jackson go out to the right, and Austin Servelt is just, for lack of a better term, hauling ass. And he just, like, he's ahead of Bo Jackson and just plows his way, helping. I don't think it was a touchdown, but he got pretty close to the end zone. It was just amazing, to the point where you're just sitting there thinking to yourself, like, he's obviously one of the 5 best offensive linemen at this point. And I think our idea still stands if you can rotate and put him in everywhere, and maybe he just plays the most snaps of every offensive lineman, but doesn't have the most snaps at any one position on the offensive line. I don't know. It's just impossible to keep him off the field. And if Philip Daniels or Tegra Shabola just isn't looking the part, he's just got to start. And he's got to just control as many reps as possible at those spots. I like the idea of him at right tackle. I mean, it's obvious that he's capable of playing tackle at this point. Like, he's been doing it all spring, basically. He's capable there. And if Philip Daniels or Ian Moore does establish themselves as maybe the better option at right tackle, I would start Austin Servelt at right guard. I just don't know how you keep this guy off the field at this point.
I think
he's going to be a captain. Like, I think Sonny Styles is going to be the block O, and I think he's going to be a captain.
I think the Austin Servelt conversation, kind of in a backdoor kind of weird way, is a Tegra Shabola or Philip Daniels conversation.
See, I don't agree with that. I don't agree.
Well, I don't agree. So, hear me out. So, the similarities, I noted this, I think, on the pod or on a video or something before. Last winter, Josh Fryer won Iron Buckeye in the winter. And then, after the spring game, Ryan Day said, we know Josh can play right tackle, but we want to find the best 5. We feel like Josh is one of our best 5. If we can figure that part of it out, that'd be great. He's played a little guard, played a little tackle. The goal is to find the best 5. I think Austin Servelt is one of Ohio State's best 5 linemen. And I think it's very much a conversation right now of, okay, what's the best combination for Ohio State? First off, is Servelt better at tackle or guard? And does he mix better with, if he's at right guard, is the offensive line better? Is maximizing the potential of this offensive line better with him at guard and Daniels at tackle? Or is it with him at tackle and Shabola at guard? I don't know. I think Seereveld has kind of proven that he deserves to be in that consideration, that he deserves to be considered one of Ohio State's best 5 linemen. And I think that's one of the big takeaways from the spring is probably they view him in this category. Now it's just about finding the right match for that puzzle piece. Now it's about finding how that side of the line works. You just know that he's going to be part of it in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, but Josh Fryer is not he's better than Josh Fryer.
That's fine, but I think
also,
the concept is still the same where he was saying, look, he's one of our best 5. We don't know if he's going to play guard or tackle, but he's going to play. He's going to be starting.
What Ryan Day says and what Ryan Day does are two different things. Austin Seereveld started because Donovan Jackson was out the first 2 weeks. He started against Akron and played 66 snaps. That game alone is more snaps at guard than Josh Fryer played in 5 years here. So
Sure.
Josh Fryer never played. He played 62 snaps in his career as a guard, and it was in 2022. And even in that year, he played more snaps at right tackle, 134, than he did at guard. Josh Fryer, on game day, has never been a guard for Ohio State, regardless of what they're doing in the background and practices. Yes, he was a backup, so they're getting him ready at a bunch of different positions. But he has been a tackle his entire career here. He is a 2-year starter at right tackle. He played 1,956 snaps at right tackle and 22 snaps at left tackle and 62 as a guard. Austin Seereveld started games for you at guard this year and was rotating both guard spots in playoff games. And then we walked in there 2 weeks ago and he's at left tackle with the starters. And it's like, huh? And then we got to see it live and it's like, oh, okay. Yeah, that makes sense. That guy should be your starting right tackle. I don't think I get what you're saying, Andrew. I don't think you're basing where you're putting Austin Seereveld based off what Tegra Shabola and Phillip Daniels are doing. I think regardless of what happens with those two, Austin Seereveld might end up being your best offensive lineman. You start him, and then you figure it out.
Well, if he's your best right tackle, then you play him at right tackle.
Did anybody see Austin Seereveld do anything other than play tackle today?
There was one sequence that I have jotted down here where he's 67, right?
Yes.
Yeah, he was playing right guard with the starting offensive line. It was Onyanwa, Luke Montgomery, Josh Padilla was in at this point. Hinsman didn't play a whole ton.
Okay.
So I wouldn't read too much in that. Padilla was in, then Seereveld, and then 69 is Ian Moore, right? He was at right tackle.
Okay. That's all I want, because if we didn't see that, then we can't have this conversation. I just think he's their best right tackle.
I agree with you. You.
Yeah, and if he's their best right tackle, then he's their best right tackle.
I think
it's also a conversation about like who is at right guard. And it's like, well, if Seereveld can play both at a high level, and like if it's okay, well, what if right tackle and right guard are equal for him? What if you think he's can be the same level of player at tackle or guard? Then it's a conversation of who does he pair best with? If it's a conversation of, well, he's a better tackle than he is a guard, well, then you play him at tackle. If he's a better guard than a tackle, then you probably play him at guard, right? Unless you have to play him at tackle. I don't think you're going to have to do that.
You said when he was at guard, Ian Moore was at tackle?
Yeah.
Okay. And we don't have to get bogged down in this because they've got like 60 practices before they have to play a football game. He looked better than everybody else today. And it's, again, just like with Lincoln Keenholz, where maybe we're overlooking stuff. Austin Seereveld's recruitment came down to Ohio State and Alabama. Nick Saban's Alabama. So throw the 302 overall ranking number 16 interior offensive lineman in 2023 recruit. Throw that out the window. This dude was down to Ohio State and Bama. That got to mean something. And it's got to mean something that they told that guy, hey, we're playing playoff games, or quite frankly, if we lose these games, it might get real rough around here. Can you play both sides for us? And he kind of thrived in it. And now they're putting him at right tackle. That's my hot take. He's going to be their starting right tackle this year. If I'm wrong, oh no, he's the starting right guard this year. But regardless, I think there is a world where I saw enough from Austin Seereveld where I don't know if I came into this practice thinking I'm going to leave it going Austin Saravel is their best offensive lineman, but I think I left thinking Austin Saravel is their best offensive lineman.
Can I ask you this though? Like, I agree. Right now I'd probably pencil him in as a starting right tackle. What if instead of rotating between left guard and right guard, he rotates between right guard and right tackle this year? What if Tegra, Philip Daniels, and Austin Saravel rotate on the right side of the line?
Then can we just give him the Outland Award trophy?
Well, we have to change the name of the Donovan Jackson Award that we named literally like last podcast to the Austin Saravel Award,
which would be more fitting because Donovan did it out of emergency. This would be doing it out of place because we want to do it,
right? But you got to win a national championship.
That's true.
It's like naming the Monday Pod, which this is, I guess.
And I have zero doubt that Austin Saravel is going to be good. Quincy Porter lost his black stripe, first true freshman to do so. This is the third straight year a wide receiver was the first. In fact, I think Marv was the first in 2021 true freshman. It was him and Jack Sawyer on the same day. I don't remember who was first in 2022. I don't remember, but I do know that it was Marv in 21, it was Cardinal in 2023, and then JJ last year. So this is a lot of years in a row where the wide receivers are first, which shouldn't be shocking. This is what they do. Andrew, anything else? We're almost an hour in here. Anything else of note you think is worthy of bringing up today?
Oh, there were a handful of recruits there. We just touched on that briefly. Darius Gray was there. He's a 5-star interior offensive lineman from the Central Virginia area and the Richmond area. He's obviously one of Ohio State's big-time recruits, one of their big-time prospects. He got an offer from Fry last year, Justin Fry, after he played. He was awesome in the camp. He was their best offensive lineman, and when they put him against Jakeem Stewart, that was like it was a war. Braylon Womack, he was here. That is a commitment that I think Ohio State's obviously really, really interested in. They're trying to, roll the red carpet out for him. Certainly. He is a kid, I think, when you look at and you go, wow, talk about look different from June to April. When he got his offer last year, you saw everything. And this time you're like, oh my goodness, this kid's an adult. So we'll see how the 5-star his commitment goes. Defensive lineman Damari Simeon, he was here, 2026 kid. He's an edge. Favor Aki, the running back out of Delaware, Ohio, for those not in state. I believe he's like 206 in the class. He was back on campus. This was his third spring visit of this practice. He's going to be on campus again for spring practice. Those of you who have the text, 614-350-3315, knew that already. So congratulations to you guys. Pat yourselves on the back because you knew that information. Favor was here. Their offensive tackle, Samuel Roseborough, was here. JB Shabazz was here. They had they have a couple other offensive linemen here, man. Like Tyler Bowen, he's recruiting his butt off. And he is really, really aggressive with getting these kids to campus. And Ohio State has 3 prospects right now committed in the 2026 class. They're obviously working on more. And a lot of trench guys here today. But yeah, it was stay tuned for more on that from the tech service. But yeah, there were a lot of notable recruits. And I think it's pretty clear to see kind of where Ohio State's priorities are. And those certainly start with like Darius Gray and Braylon Womack.
Chris Henry Jr. looks like a basketball player.
Oh, yeah. Chris Henry Jr. was here. Duh. I'm an idiot. Chris Henry Jr. was here. And one of the reasons I knew he was here is because he's very, very tall.
Taller than everybody.
But I remember I saw him stand on like way on the other side of the field, which again, tall. And I was like, I'll have to get a picture of him later, let people know he's here. I walked over later and he was talking to Jelani Thurman. And Jelani Thurman is 6'6". He's listed at 6'6".
Jelani Thurman is not 6'6".
Well, he's listed at it, and Chris Henry Jr. was taller than him. I was like, look at this. It's like, all right, well, even if Jelani Thurman is 6'5", like Jelani Thurman's not 6'2". Like Jelani Thurman is a big kid, and Chris Henry Jr. is taller than him. And I think Steven said this, like, he looks like a basketball player. He looks like he's here for a basketball visit because he is just so much taller than everybody else. That is a very, very fascinating player. He obviously just shut down his recruitment, the 5-star in the 2026 class. So keep an eye out on his senior season because, again, I mean, Ohio State's pulling another 5-star, and he's the next one. And he's a different type of receiver than they have had because he is a different type of receiver than many people because not many receivers enter college at 6'6".
I think Brian Hartline's only concern in terms of losing Chris Henry Jr. isn't losing him to a different city; it's losing him to a different building because Jake Diebler's might try to pull him into shot.
If he grows 2 more inches, he's going to learn some post moves, and he's a first-round pick.
Not at 6'8". He's not a post player.
You could be.
Luke is 6'7", playing point guard.
You could be a 3.
Cooper Flagg's like 6'7".
Yeah,
that's fair.
Like
I've yet to see him like pull out the post moves.
He's tall, yes, for a football player.
You're forgetting
for a
how
basketball player, he's
tall,
average height.
Yeah, you know what? Yeah, that's fair.
I'm just saying, Jake Diebler needs wings. I mean, he needs bigs too. Maybe he should come. Well, Ethan, that's the thing. But football players are not tall in comparison to basketball players. They're just big people.
They're huge. But that's the funny thing. I remember when I was in college, every football player thinks that they could play on the basketball team.
Yeah, and
every single one of them. They all think they have game. And then you talk to the players on the basketball team. It's like, you think you can play football? And like maybe one of them is like, I think I can play football. And everybody else is like, no, I don't want to get hit. What are you talking about? I don't want to play football.
And yeah, to be fair, at 6'9", taking a hit over the middle just doesn't sound like a lot of fun.
Oh, that sounds awful.
You just can't protect yourself the same way. Stefan, anything else you want to hit on?
Andrew brought him up there. I thought Jelani had a pretty good practice.
Yeah.
He was playing he was playing a decent amount with the ones. I thought Jelani looks good out there. You guys mentioned, Chris Henry Jr. He's probably the next freshman to be the first freshman or next receiver to be the first freshman lose their black stripe. It was Kai Stokes in 22, Steven. I found the tracker you guys published.
Okay.
So that's
tough.
Breaks the streak.
Yeah.
Although there wasn't a great receiver in that freshman class, if I'm not mistaken.
There wasn't. That's like the only class that didn't have a 5-star. Well, though Caleb Burton was, but he got injured and kind of tumbled down the ranking.
Yeah, he was one of the later players. I mean, I'm sure they were fine at receiver in 2022, but
yeah. They had another JJ who wore number 18 back then. Okay, I think that's it from Mylan Graham. Continues to look like Garrett Wilson reincarnated. I thought Malik Hartford and Jalen McClain, if we were worried about the safety depth, I thought they looked really good, especially since Caleb Downs didn't do anything. Both of those guys spent some time with the ones.
I'm laughing at you. Like one of our, footnotes from practice, this guy reminded us of Garrett Wilson once again. We'll just mention that in passing.
Looks like Luke Garrett out
there. Thanks for listening to Buckeye Talk. Ohio State, their fifth receiver is a first-round pick.
Yeah. He looked like Luke Garrett out there. I don't know what you want me to say. He looked like Luke Garrett out there. Caden McDonald is a really good run stopper. He got stuffs on Sam Williams-Dixon and C.J. Donaldson because they're going for it on 4th and 1 every single time because you're not punting. You did punt period already. And so Caden McDonald, when you're looking for some noses, it's very clear he is going to be a very good player here. Dominic Kirks got a sack on Julian Sand, and legitimately a sack, not to touch and then argue with your coaches whether it was a sack or not because they were live. He literally pulled Julian Sand to the ground.
Edric had one. I can't remember who the quarterback was. Edric had one where it wasn't a live period, and I think he was sitting there being like, "Boy, are you lucky?" Because I was about to light you up.
Yeah, that was the thing because they're going, the quarterbacks are live, and all of a sudden the entire defensive line's like, "Yeah!" It was a lot of fun. I think that's about it.
CJ Donaldson, you and I talked about it a little bit after practice.
Yeah.
He's 50, man. He's quick. This is not West Virginia CJ Donaldson.
Yeah, just throw out all the film from West Virginia.
Yeah. This is not – he literally looks like a different human being.
Yeah. I didn't see any 3-4s, so I didn't leave practice early. It was – they're running a 4-2-5.
I texted you guys, when they ran the dime, I looked out, and at this point I think Peyton Pierce was the only linebacker out there.
Yeah.
Maybe, because just again, Sonny wasn't playing a whole ton. We saw a lot of Peyton Pierce. But CJ Hicks was on the field, and I was like, man, this dime look when you got CJ Hicks on the roster playing defensive end is nice.
Yeah. And Peyton Pierce was making a lot of plays.
Yeah, he looked good.
I think they're pretty locked in with their top 3 linebackers, Sonny Arvell and Peyton Pierce. Arvell kind of quiet day.
It is fun. Yeah, it was kind of a quiet day for Arvell. It is funny. We look up and down this roster, and I think we all walk away from practice being like, they're losing a lot, but at most spots they're fine. But the main takeaway for the entire world is the quarterback room is on fire. Ohio State's going to go 5-7.
All because Ryan Day yelled at Julian Sand for throwing in the double coverage. But okay.
I will say there were a lot of flags. It was kind of sloppy in that sense.
Listen, man. Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. Listen, practice refs. Chill. Okay?
You got to get their reps in.
No, you don't. Chill.
They're preparing you for facing the SEC. Flag heavy, apparently.
Just
based on last season.
Just chill. Just chill. There were a lot of flags for PIs thrown on plays where the ball wasn't even close to a receiver being able to catch it. And that was across the board. All the quarterbacks were over and under throwing guys at times. And it would be clearly he can't catch this. And then you see a flag go up in the air. And I was standing next to Tony Girdman. And we were just like, chill out. Relax a little bit, man.
If you want to be a midseason form, you can't pretend like officiating is just going to be perfect. I would have personally called it targeting on someone just because.
Just because kick somebody out of practice.
Yeah. And we'll sit there for an hour. We'll look at the replay and we'll say that can't be targeting. And then we'll say the call is confirmed. It's targeting. You have to be in midseason form, Arvell Reese.
They put it up on the screen in the Woody, and we all were like, boo. We had a little skirmish between Phillip Daniels and freshman linebacker Riley Pettijohn after a play. Because, again, the quarterbacks are live, but then also offensive linemen do take it personal when you hit the quarterback. He helps Julian Sand off the ground on a play where Ethan Owens-Yawa got beat on the play, so it was on him. So a little bit of skirmishing, which is good. There's nothing wrong with that. A little nippiness has never hurt nobody in football. I think that's it. Yeah, it builds character.
It could hurt someone in football.
I mean, unless so. When I was covering the Ravens in 2020, Earl Thomas and Chuck Clark had a fight, but it's like, it's training camp, it's fine. Well, it's normally when it's an offensive lineman or a defensive lineman going at it, not two players from the same position. So we didn't have any of that, so that was good.
Yeah, listen, man, builds character. One other freshman I want to point out, Jake Cook, lower rated guy in the 2025 recruiting class. He was working with the twos at left guard, which I think is intriguing. You're always looking for which one of these offensive linemen, where offensive linemen don't start as true freshmen. At least they're not supposed to. But which one of these guys are maybe setting themselves up for the future? And I think Jake Cook is doing that, along with Quincy Porter. Bo Jackson looked great. And then Desi Jones and Phillip Bell had some good catches as well. That'll wrap up everything. Get the text, because I'm sure I have more things that I'm just forgetting right now that I'll be sending out throughout the text. 614-350-3315. Again, this is also your Monday pod, so the next time we record will be after we talk with Ryan Day on Monday, heading into the spring game, and which means it's time for Stefan and Andrew to put on their GM hats. We're going to be drafting spring rosters to put to the test. And then you guys get to tell me how stupid they were for how they went about their drafting process. It should be fun. Coach's Clinic is next week as well, which is always great to just learn some ball. We'll be texting off of that, plus plenty of other things. 2-week free trial, $3.99 after that. 614-350-3315 for Stefan Krajisnik and Andrew Gillis. I'm Stephen Means, and that was Buckeye Talk.